getting the latest from the University of Idaho murders from officials in Moscow.
Fry with the Moscow Police Department. Joining me today is Captain Roger Lanier with the Moscow Police Department, Moscow Deputy City Supervisor Tyler Palmer, Colonel Kedrick Wills of the Idaho State Police, University of Idaho President Scott Green, University of Idaho Dean of Students Blaine Eccles, and Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson. We are thankful for all the tips and leads the public has provided in Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Madison's murder investigation. No bit of information is too small, and every tip will be pursued. So far, this information has helped investigators build a picture of the areas of interest and the relationships these four had with each other and our community. We still believe there's more information to be gathered, which will continue creating a window through which we view this case. We all want to understand why this happened and what drove someone to do this. The families of those involved and our entire community deserve to know. We ask anyone with any information related to what happened with these four who are in our community, their interaction with others, and whether they expressed concern or commented about someone or something strange, to get that information to us. Even if you don't believe it is relevant, investigators will review and determine if and how your information builds the picture. Sometimes what a video or picture doesn't show is equally as important as what might be there. Information on how to submit tips and updates on the investigation can be found on the Moscow Police Department webpage. We continue moving forward to understand why this occurred in our community and seek answers to bring justice for the victims and their loved ones, because they deserve it. I personally want you to know we care, and we will continue to work hard to get these answers for these individuals. At this time, I'd like to introduce Captain Roger Lanier for an update on what we can currently share about this investigation.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Roger Lanier with the Moscow Police Department. I want to assure you first off that the loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders. Investigators are prepared to work through the Thanksgiving holiday to continue their efforts. I also want to express our sincere appreciation to the Idaho State Police, the FBI, the University of Idaho, and the Latah County Sheriff's Office for their assistance. And I especially want to thank the community of Moscow for their outpouring of support through this incredibly difficult time. Today I'm going to recap in brief what we know. I'm going to provide some new information, and I'm going to address some rumors. On the evening of November 12th and into the early morning hours of November 13th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. after visiting a local bar and a street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were also out in the community at Sigma Chi, and they arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Two surviving roommates who were also out in the community arrived home at approximately 1 a.m. Later, on the morning of November 13th, at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed. The call reported an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence, and a surviving roommate's cell phone was used. During that call, the dispatcher spoke to multiple people who were on scene. Moscow police officers responded and found two victims, two on the second floor and two on the third floor of 1122 King Road. The results of autopsies indicated that the four were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds, and there was no sign of sexual assault. We do not believe the following individuals were involved: the 2 surviving roommates, the male seen in a grub truck video circulating on the internet, a private party who drove Kaylee and Madison home, any of the individuals who spoke to the dispatcher on the 911 call. We're also aware of a male whom Madison and Kaylee had called several times the morning of November 13th, and we do not suspect that individual. Detectives have canvassed the neighborhoods looking for evidence, physical evidence, video surveillance, and they've contacted numerous residents to see if anybody may have seen or heard anything. They continue requesting tips that can be sent to our tip line or called in to our tip line. The specific areas that we're interested in are detailed on maps on our city website and our Facebook page, but as stated earlier, generally south of Taylor Avenue to Palouse River Drive, and the area west of US 95 over to the Arboretum. We have heard mention that Kaylee stated she may have had a stalker. Detectives have been looking into that, and to this point have been unable to corroborate the statement, although we continue to seek information and tips regarding that report. No suspects have been named or arrested, and we continue looking for what we believe to be a fixed blade knife used in the murders. We have not released the names of any of the subjects who spoke on the 911 call, and we have not released the call itself. Any online reports of the victims being tied and gagged are not accurate. Regarding the resources that we've put forth in this investigation, the Moscow Police Department has 4 detectives, 24 patrol officers, and 5 support staff dedicated to this investigation. The FBI has 22 investigators in Moscow and 20 additional agents assigned in various locations, as well as 2 members of the Behavioral Analysis Unit. The Idaho State Police has 20 investigators, a public information team, a forensic services and crime scene team, and 15 uniformed troopers who have been valuable in helping provide community patrols and safety patrols. We very much appreciate their support. This is our highest priority. It will remain our highest priority. We owe that to the families. At this time, I would like to introduce Colonel Kedrick Wills from the Idaho State Police.
Thank you, Captain, and thank you for those that are in attendance today for your attendance. We really appreciate this. What has affected Moscow and the community here has affected all of us as Idahoans. We have a way in Idaho that the communities come together in tough times, and this is one of those tough times. Leads from the community are important, and as the captain spoke, no tip is too small, and we would urge anybody that has any information whatsoever to please provide that to help us solve this case. The lead agency of this case is Moscow Police Department with Chief Fry and his dedicated team of professionals, and the Idaho State Police's role is to support them and their good work here. There is an awful lot of efforts going on behind the scenes, and I'll explain why it's behind the scenes in just a moment. But what can't be seen isn't always known of what we do in law enforcement, and I'd like to explain that in just a moment. But the Idaho State Police and the FBI continue to provide resources to this investigation. I would like to speak for just a moment, if I could, not about this specific case, but rather an overview of how cases are investigated, so that maybe it'll give some sense of the why of the timeline here. We understand you want answers. We want answers too. But these take time, and if I could explain just a minute about the process here of what we go through just generally in investigations. So we use in advanced investigative techniques and crime scene processing. So what happens when a call comes in, the original officers, the first officers that respond to a scene, and then once that they've got their work there and determined that they need some additional investigative assistance, then they call investigators to come and help process that scene. And oftentimes it requires a forensics team to help process that scene. And when I say process the scene, what we're looking for is we're looking for any evidence that may help us to be able to find the people or person responsible for what we're seeing. And so we're collecting biological evidence, we're collecting latent evidence, whether it's shoe prints or tire marks or anything like that. We're trying to collect that evidence. We're trying to we do that through photographs, we do that through 3D mapping to be able to map the scene. We identify and we mark evidence, and then we collect that evidence. And then we look for any evidence that we think may be helpful. And once that is done, then we package all that evidence up and we send it off to forensics laboratories to be analyzed to see if it can help provide clues of what's happening. All of this takes an immense amount of time. The reason this is important to understand is because it's important that while this is such a tragic circumstance that we find ourselves in law enforcement, we believe we owe this to the surviving families to get this right. And so we're not willing to sacrifice speed for quality. We do testing for blood, we do latent print processing, any documentations for anything at the scene so that we can reconstruct that scene at a later date. If I could share just a few statistics of this particular crime scene. At this crime scene, we collected 103 pieces of individual evidence. We took approximately 4,000 photographs. We've conducted multiple 3D scans of the residents, and we have hundreds of hours used by technicians and investigators, including our forensics team and detectives from multiple agencies. We've processed over 1,000 total tips and conducted 150 interviews. I hope that you understand that gives a little bit of a perception of just how complex this case is. We have the utmost confidence in this investigation and that this investigation will be done right. We ask you and we ask the public to please remain patient as this investigation unfolds. And please rely on official sources of information. We really appreciate the media's assistance. We know you have a job to do. We know that you're professionals and you do it to the best of your ability. And we're thankful that you're here because without you, we could not get the correct information to the community that could help us solve this. So I can't overemphasize how much I appreciate and we appreciate in law enforcement your willingness to do this. What you are doing matters. And it matters in what we are committed to doing, and that is the best way we can think of to honor these victims and their families is to conduct this investigation correctly. Finally, I'd like to share that I've been in regular contact with Idaho's Governor Brad Little throughout this investigation. Governor Little is making available up to $1 million for expenses related to this ongoing investigation. As you heard, the resources that are here in Moscow and throughout with this investigation, you can see that those expenses would add up quickly. Like all Idahoans, Governor Little is deeply saddened by the loss of these 4 bright and promising young lives. And he's making sure the state of Idaho provides all of the resources possible to ensure that the person or persons responsible for this are brought to justice. And now I'd like to turn the time over to the University of Idaho President Scott Green.
Good afternoon, I'm Scott Green, President of the University of Idaho. We deeply appreciate the kind words of support we have been receiving from our alumni and friends, as well as many others who may not know us but have taken time to reach out. People are donating to the victims' GoFundMe pages and the Bruce Pittman Fund for Students in Need, and they're buying personal devices for our students and continuing to look for other ways that they can help. This is what it means to be a vandal. In the last 24 hours, we have sent updated communications to our students, employees, parents, and alumni. And in those communications, we discuss campus security, services available to our students and employees, our plans for both remote and live instruction to close the semester, and our plans for a candlelight vigil on November 30. All of this is available on our website. We all want swift justice and continue to work with law enforcement to aid them in any way helpful to their investigation. As the investigation continues, we will better know how to proceed in the new year. We will endeavor to find the balance among safety concerns, the need to grieve, and the long-term needs of all of our students and employees. Through everything we do, we will keep Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, as well as their families and friends, in our thoughts and our prayers. Thank you. I'm sorry, I need to introduce Deputy City Supervisor Tyler Palmer. Tyler, sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Palmer. I'm Deputy City Supervisor with the City of Moscow, and I'm here today on behalf of Mayor Arthur Betke, the Moscow City Council, and Moscow City Administration. The loss of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan has sent an overwhelming, palpable wave of grief, confusion, sorrow, and anger through our peaceful community. Mayor Betke, with the support of our City Council, has instructed staff to marshal all necessary resources for our law enforcement professionals as they diligently work to assure the safety of every member of this community and find the person or people responsible for this. The outpouring of support, kindness, and genuine empathy locally and even globally has been a humbling reminder that those who want to help far outnumber those who want to hurt. And we take some solace in that. To all of you who've reached out, sent letters and cards, provided food for those working around the clock on this investigation, and offered other resources, we thank you sincerely. These continued acts of charity and humanity remind us why we live in this tight-knit, caring community. The City of Moscow is committed to seeing this investigation through to a successful end and will continue to dedicate whatever resources are necessary for that effort. We are thankful for the immense support from the University of Idaho, Lake County, Governor Little and his office, the Idaho State Police, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Moscow is my home. And I know we won't be defined by tragedy, but how we respond to it. We mourn the loss of these beautiful young people, and we will relentlessly pursue justice on their behalf. Thank you.
So we would like to open it up to any questions, but I would like to ask if there's an Argonaut reporter here that would like to ask. And then second after that, an Evergreen reporter, if there's one in the room. So let's start with the Argonaut, please.
I'm with the LCSC Pathfinder. Can I speak?
James Torman Aldrich with the Argonaut. I have two questions, if that's all right. Firstly being what the police presence is going to look like after Thanksgiving break and how long that's going to last.
So I'll go ahead and answer. The police presence is going to be very heavy after the break. We have Idaho State Patrol that will also still be in the area, and you'll see a high impact of patrol officers and troopers, as well as Lake County Sheriff's Department personnel in the area.
And then secondly, will there be any possibility of the release of the 911 phone call, even in transcript form?
Not at this time. That's part of our investigation.
Daily Evergreen?
Frankie Beer, the Daily Evergreen. I guess the Moscow PD press release mentioned looking into hundreds of pieces of information about Kaylee's potential stalker. I was wondering what led you to believe she did have a stalker possibly, and why those pieces of information haven't come up with conclusive results.
I'm actually going to let Captain Lanier answer this question, okay?
Thank you, Chief. We obtained information through some of our interviews that Kaylee had made some comments about a stalker, so that's where that came from. We have followed up looking at specific time frames and specific areas of town. So far, we have not been able to corroborate it, but we're not done looking into that piece of information. Thank you.
Dan Springer, Fox News. If I can get Captain Lanier. Sir, why not tell the public who the target was? You've said that this was a targeted attack. Why not tell the public who was targeted? If it was multiple people, it would go a long ways to telling the public what you're looking for and who you're looking for, the type of person you're looking for. Why not do that to alleviate some of the fears out there in the community?
Well, first and foremost, we have the integrity of the investigation to preserve. And we feel like that information is integral to us and how we conduct our investigation. Releasing that to the public may or may not flood us with a lot of information that's not relevant or specific to what we're looking at.
Don't you want more information from the public?
We do want more information, but we don't want to put our investigation in jeopardy by releasing what we have. There's always a balance between what you're willing to release versus what you're trying to gather. We've told the public very clearly from the beginning that we're looking for a knife. We've told the public very clearly from the beginning that we believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
Lauren Patterson, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I see that the FBI set up a special web page just to collect digital information. I'm also curious if any of the investigators can speak to this. Curious if the Wi-Fi hotspot has been tapped at all. It's possible if the suspect had their phone on them, it may have pinged off the Wi-Fi in the residence. Has that been checked on at all?
As I stated, our investigation is looking at every avenue of every piece of evidence that we can. The FBI has given us a website for any downloads of video or anything, so we ask people, if you have any of that, to send it to us, please.
Thank you. Natasha Chen, CNN. I have a couple of questions here. One, in many homicide cases, the first hours, the first days are so incredibly crucial. Now that we're moving into a window that's further and further away from the incident, does that concern you about the ability to arrest a suspect, or do you have information that you simply can't share with us that makes you confident that you're close to solving this?
I'm going to have the Colonel step up and address that, please.
Well, thank you for the question, and I would like to address it a little more globally than specifically. A little more globally here. Yes, as time goes on, I mean, we're time past the initial calls for service and the initial crime. However, we also, as time goes on, are able to process the forensics evidence, any forensics evidence that we may have collected, and so that helps us. And we're also able to process the tips that continue to come in, which may help us. And so while time in one respect is not beneficial, in another respect it is, because it helps provide us with that whole picture of with all of the information that we're gathering, whether it's evidence or tips or any other information that we're gathering. It may help us to provide a clearer picture. And so it may help answer those questions that we're seeking as well.
Hi, Angela Palermo, Idaho Statesman. I was wondering if there's any evidence that suggests the attacker visited the first floor where the two surviving roommates were?
That information will not be released at this time. It's part of our investigation, and as we stated earlier, there's many things that are involved in an investigation that we will release and things we won't.
Good afternoon, Ashley Soriano, Fox News. I have two questions. Have you considered the possibility of a murder-suicide? Is that something that you guys are considering right now?
That question has been asked previously, not at a press conference. It's certainly something that we looked at in the early part of the investigation. It is not something that we're looking at this time.
And I know some of the investigators' vehicles and police vehicles are coming in and out of the driveway. Do you think that potentially could disturb any tire marks or other evidence?
Yeah, so the question has been asked about why did the crime scene tape expand, and that's not uncommon. When the first officers arrived, they tried to cordon off what they thought was important. We immediately expanded that when the investigators got there to process the scene. And logically, as this progresses, and you've seen this through our press releases, we have expanded it to several areas of the city and have in fact canvassed entire neighborhoods. So we try very, very hard to uncover every single bit of evidence possible in an area before we move on to the next area. So yes, we've looked at everything that we think we need to look at in and around the crime scene at this point.
But do you believe the cars coming back and forth in the driveway, potentially like tire marks or foot marks, that there could have been?
Well, it's a gravel parking area, so it would be hard to say that.
How are you folks holding up? How are your detectives and officers holding up? And Chief, you mentioned that detectives are prepared to work tomorrow on Thanksgiving, so is the expectation that they will be?
That is correct. We're going to have many detectives and agents working all the way through this incident. Our people are dedicated. Our people care about this community. Our people want to ensure the community that we're here to bring safety and we're here to get a resolve on this. So we will continue to push through. We'll give people time off as they need it, and we will continue to take care of them. But we're gonna keep pushing on this until we come to a conclusion.
Chris Mitchell, KLEW. Is there any plans to increase security for the Apple Cup on Friday?
Well, I can't speak to what's going on in the state of Washington. I can only speak to what we're doing here on the campus of the University of Idaho in concert with President Green and his team. We are absolutely, with the Idaho State Police and the Moscow Police Department, we are 100% dedicated to making sure that this continues to be a safe place for students to do what students need to do. And so that's why we have so many uniformed troopers here that aren't necessarily assisting with the investigation, but rather here to help with the campus security. And President Green and his team have been fantastic in helping to strike that balance to make sure that we have law enforcement resources here. So while I can't speak what's going on anywhere else, I can tell you at the University of Idaho we have a lot of state troopers, a severe increase of state troopers and Moscow police officers here, both on campus as well as throughout the community.
John Gabell, ABC News. Are investigators looking at any possible connection to an unsolved double stabbing in the Salem, Oregon area about 1.5 years ago? Specifically, 2 people stabbed in their home in the middle of the night, long knife, no suspect at this point. One died, one survived.
I think we're looking at every avenue, and we have other agencies reaching out to us with other cases and stuff that we are doing follow-up on, and we will continue to follow up on those.
Are you aware of that case?
Actually, I had a tip come in on that case, and I forwarded it to our tip line.
Okay, one more question. Can you confirm the bodies have been released to the families or are being so released today?
I believe they have been released to the family, and I know that I believe one of them has already had a funeral.
Destiny Martin with the LCSC Pathfinder. Can you lend any insights into the possibility that the murder weapon is linked to the ROTC program? And also you mentioned that the analysis unit is here. Will we be able to hear anything from them about a working profile they possibly have? And on that note, have you guys ruled out the possibility that the killer might be a female?
So we look at every avenue. We're looking at every group of people. Like I said early in our first press conference, we're not going to let any stone go unturned. I believe, can you just clarify your second portion of that question? Oh, the BAU, sorry.
Yes, I would like to know if the BAU has a working profile because, you know, you look at victimology. Sure. Are you able to tell us who was killed first on the time of death so that we may understand, like, who was, if it was a targeted attack, it would make the most sense if they killed one of the roommates first and then maybe the other two, you know, I'm not, sure. This is not speculation, I'm getting off topic. My question is are you guys looking at a working profile? Have they come up with anything new regarding the motive or intentions of the killer or killers?
The BAU unit is working diligently to do what they do. Will that be provided? I'm sure that may be provided once the conclusion of this case comes together. But they are continually taking in information and reading reports and gathering information for that.
Good afternoon, Chief. Amanda Rowley with CREM 2. Seeing some speculation with some of the cars being searched this past week. Wonder if you can squash some of the rumors and that speculation. Is there anything you can share specifically on the white car out front, and then a follow-up for the university after?
So I'll have Captain Lanier go ahead and come up with that.
Thank you.
Well, we have looked at a lot of different vehicles. I'm assuming you're referring to the vehicles that were in the parking lot at the time. Yeah, so some of those vehicles belonged to the victims and some belonged to other people in the house. And so for us, that's part of the crime scene. As I mentioned earlier, the crime scene was expanded out through the parking lot. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at those prior to releasing the crime scene. It was part of the initial investigation that night.
Thank you. And for the university, is there any additional information at this time that you can offer about the candlelight vigil, maybe what we can expect from that, and then any other information you can provide about that ask of the community to light the night on November 30th?
Thank you for that. I'm going to turn this over to Blaine Eccles at this point. He's actually planning the whole event, so we appreciate it.
Good afternoon. I'm Blaine Eccles, Dean of Students. The vigil is going to be hosted next Wednesday, November 30th at 5 p.m. We have it scheduled for the administration lawn at the moment. We're going to make a final determination on location early next week, just because we're waiting for the weather window to get closer, so we feel comfortable that that's where it will be located. We're anticipating a large turnout of community members as well as university members, students, faculty, and staff at that particular event. And all of the families have been invited to join us if they so wish from that aspect of it. The response family members. The Light the Night event that you're talking about, while I don't have a lot of details on that, is set to coincide at the same time, just so that people that can't be here in person as part of the vigil are going to be able to participate remotely as well. The vigil will be live streamed, and it's safe to say that the Vandal family is going to unite and come together to support the families in the darkest moments of their life, quite frankly.
So I'm going to go ahead and take 2 more questions, okay?
Jordan Smith, KXLY. At this point in time, do investigators know which entrance the suspect used to enter the residence, if this was someone who might have known the door code at the front or maybe used the back door?
Once again, that's part of our investigation. We're not going to release that information this time. Thank you.
Noah Bolter, Monroe News 8. You said this was a targeted event. You won't tell us why they were targeted. What should students do to prevent being targeted in the future?
Well, that's a great question, especially in light of what just happened. If you would have asked us 9 days ago, we would have had probably a different answer. Moscow's always been a very safe community. In light of this, and maybe we should always look at it this way, vigilance, always traveling in pairs, knowing where you're going, telling someone when you arrive, and just that kind of general awareness. Maybe we should, as a community, have always been doing that. You know, in some ways, this took our innocence. I would tell students that you need to stay with a friend. I know that the university staff is looking at different options to increase some of the safety on campus and providing certain options to students. So, yeah, going forward, there's a lot of things that maybe we wish we would have done before, but we need to start doing now.
So I'm going to go ahead and close, but what we do want to let our community know that we do care. We do want to provide a safe environment. We will continue to work hard, and we'll continue to do everything we can. We want people to be vigilant. We want people to report anything suspicious to us and let us get there and handle it. But we are here to provide that safety. So I want to thank you today for coming, and I appreciate your questions.
Thank you.